Hello, this is Duncan here for Cambridge Coffee Corners once again. And on this occasion, I'm joined by Guy Courtin from Tecsys. Guy is the VP of Industry. So welcome, Guy. And I'm joined by Ken Belanger, VP of Cambridge Retail Advisors. And we're going to be talking about the K economy and the effect of the K economy on the supply chain. So Guy, I'm gonna play the educate. I'm going to be sitting in your classroom for a minute now. Talk to us a little bit about what the K economy is.
Absolutely. Thanks, Duncan. Thanks, Ken. And I did bring my coffee, so I'm staying in theme. Yeah, cheers. So yeah, the K economy is interesting. And I will preface this by saying, I'm not an economist. I'm a political scientist by trade, which might be a step below an economist. So take that for what it's worth. But from what we're seeing in the K economy, right, there's a lot of discussion of, is it a U economy or what does it look like? The K economy really talks about sort of a bifurcation between two groups of buyers. So there's the top level, the top of the K, which is the affluent. And there's unfortunately the bottom of the K, which is those who are looking for more affordability. They're struggling a bit. They're feeling pressure from inflation, from job loss, etc. And what we're seeing is really impacting the industry and retail in particular. Why? Because you have two different audiences, two different groups that you're trying to sell to, and you might be selling the same product, but you're trying to attract two different audiences. For example, I was reading a statistic that the top part of the K economy, the top 10% of earners account for almost 50% of all of retail sales, right? So that means 50% of the spend is being done by 10% out there. So the products you're trying to cater to that group, it's gonna be very different from the 90% that are below that. So I think from that perspective, when we think about the K economy as a retailer, as a supply chain, we have to think about how does that impact our consumer, our audience, and who we're trying to sell to, and then therefore our product mix, what our products are made, how they're packaged, how they're distributed, where they're put, where they're placed, how they're returned, etc. So I think it's something that, we're in the midst of, and it's interesting because I think we're starting to see some impacts of it. Coca-Cola's talked about it and others. I think it's something to keep an eye on.
Thanks for that. Thanks for the education. I feel like I'm at least a few steps closer to that. Ken, what's the impressions that you've seen around the impact of the K economy on retail in general?
I'm looking at it from the retailer's perspective.
Yeah.
Which is if they're on the bottom of the K,
yeah,
there's a lot of things that they don't necessarily do well that they need to really focus on. So they might rethink things like a private label because that gives them lower in the bottom K. It'll give more value to the customer. And customers are doing more with less. So less money, that means less demand, less inventory, and you need to have some value. So what ways can you compensate that lower K?
Yeah.
So that they can get as much, if not more, than what they've got.
Right.
And that's one way that you could do it with private label. If you're a grocery store,
yeah,
may not have done that before. However, that's a strategy you're trying to pull off.
Yeah. So Guy, you talked about within the K economy, you could actually be having the same product. I mean, one example is the private labeling. So in theory, it's the same product,
right?
Or very, very similar, but obviously packaged in a different way, hitting a different market. What are some of the other attributes where you talk about the same product or something like that hitting both parts of the K?
Absolutely. I think, a great example about private label, I think that's one area where we see the opportunity to sell a similar product at a lower cost. The strain is that you're relying on your same supply chain. So now if you think about private label, you think about a more affordable product. Let's take, for example, a can of soda. Are you going to use a lower quality aluminum because it costs you less? You want to protect margin. Are you going to package it in a smaller can? Why? Because for affordability, you want to be able to give them the same product, but smaller package, less expensive, etc. Well, so now it impacts your manufacturing facility, your distribution, your packaging, your store shelves, right? So I think we have to think about all that. I think you're absolutely right that if you look at private label, you look at these aspects, right? Retailers have been using that. Why? To capture their own more margin themselves. But now it's an opportunity to address the K economy at that lower end while potentially protecting your brand value at the top end of the K economy, right? So you might get two different products that are really the same, but one carries that brand name where you say, oh, it's brand X, Y, and Z. They have a lot of brand equity. We want to protect it. That private label fighting brand, maybe I don't know that it's from that brand, and I still buy it because it's good quality and I perceive it as such, but it's not associated to that top end brand. So I think we're going to start seeing more and more of that. I just think it's one of those things that if retailers haven't already started doing this, right, 2025, even before that, it doesn't mean it's too late, but it's going to be a scramble because now you've got to think about your supply chain, your suppliers, your distributors. If you haven't already planned for that, it doesn't turn on a dime, right? And what happens if in 6 months that a K economy gets compressed and it's no longer a K economy and we're all doing great or we're all doing poorly, right? We hit a recession or worse. All of a sudden now, if you're a retailer and you've revamped your supply chain to meet this K economy and it's shifted, now you might be stuck with the wrong side of the K in your supply chain.
So if we talk about the K economy and how it applies to retail technology, it's fair to say that in 2025, AI was, I'll call it a period of discovery, and those irrational expectations has been used as well. What do you see as the confluence of retail technology and having to service both parts of the K economy? What do you think, Ken?
I think there's a couple of things that retailers are trying to operationalize, and it's usually around what can I do quickly and that would add value, whether it's productivity increases, workforce management, where you take people who were normally doing lower value tasks, now they're doing other things because maybe some automation and the payback would pay for itself. So that's one area. I think retailers are trying to get wins where they say AI is helping us in other ways, whether it's inventory optimization and the way it's on the shelf things, right? If that lower K is buying less, do you still need the same number of facings? You still need the same number of products. What does your demand signals look like based on the K economy? Because the models won't necessarily change unless people make that change.
What about your perspective on this one, Guy?
No, I agree. I think it's a great point about sort of using AI for things like inventory optimization, looking at store shelves. And I think K economy regardless. I think it's something that retailers need to think about. I always talk about AI use cases being narrow, right? Being narrow in the sense of, the data, what the outcome you're trying to get, and you have a distinct set of rules, right? It's like playing chess, right? Chess is a narrow AI use case. Yes, there's thousands of moves that the three of us here, I don't know if any of you are grandmaster, but the three of us here cannot even grasp how many moves there are, whereas a computer can, but it's still finite, right? It seems like a lot to us, but to a computer, it's easy, it's finite. So it's the same thing when you talk about inventory to store shelf placement. I think the K economy is just, to your point, Ken, just exacerbating the need for that, right? The need for retailers to focus on specific narrow use cases to use AI to solve very finite problems. This whole notion of, 2025, the irrational exuberance of AI, like, well, we're going to solve supply chain planning. Give me a break. Supply chain planning invariably is wrong because I'm taking historic data. I'm trying to plan for the future, which we cannot predict. I don't care how smart the AI is. It cannot predict the future. But if we're looking at things like at the store shelf level, planogramming, pricing optimization at the store shelf level, looking at the K economy, how we have two different types of consumers and how we get that. I think now we're starting to see maybe more tangible AI use cases, which I think is a smart thing to do. And smart thing for retailers to start looking at this technology in that lens, right? I will further, don't let technology vendors like us sort of bamboozle you into thinking that it's going to solve world hunger. It's not, right? But if it's going to solve that store shelf level or inventory problems or something finite, take a look at it because I think it's going to help. And the K economy, I think, because of the challenges it poses, there's a great opportunity to take advantage of AI.
Well, I feel like I've learned something there.
And it is so much easier to be in the top of the K than it is on the bottom. The bottom of the K, you got to do a lot more work.
Gentlemen, that's about all we've got time for today. So, Guy, Ken, thanks for joining us. Always from Duncan here at Cambridge Retail Advisors at NRF 2026. Back to the studio.